For 19 years, I sat in a hardware store on Delaney Street and watched my mother steal from her own family. I found the second set of books when I was 26. I never said a word, not to my father, not to my brother, not to the accountant who eventually put her name on a fraud referral. Last spring, my mother finally told me where all of that money went, and the moment she said it, I understood that I had spent 19 years protecting the wrong person, because it was never her I should have been afraid of. My name is Paul Rasmussen, and my family sold nails and lumber to the same Ohio town for 51 years. Rasmussen Hardware. My grandfather opened it. My father, Dale, ran the floor, and my mother, Corinne, ran the books. Every invoice, every payroll check, every tax filing, for 30 years. My father was the one everyone loved. He knew every customer's first name and half their kids' birthdays. He'd carry lumber out to a widow's truck and refuse the tip. In our town, Dale Rasmussen was the good man. That's the part you need to hold on to, because it's the part that took me 19 years to see through. There were small things, if you knew to look. Men at the counter used to joke that Dale was every woman's favorite, and my mother would go very quiet and find something to do in the back. And my father never talked about 1997, not the year, not anything in it. If it came up, he'd suddenly need to check on a delivery. I was a kid. I thought that was just how he was. My older brother Kyle worked the register. I did inventory. And my mother sat in that back office with the door mostly closed, and nobody ever asked her a single question about anything, because she was just Mom, the quiet one, the one who handled things. I found it in the spring of 2004. I was 26, and I was looking for a supplier invoice in the back office while she was at the bank. There were 2 ledgers in the bottom drawer. One was the one the accountant saw. The other one had different numbers, smaller deposits, cash pulled out in amounts just under what a bank has to report. 600 here, 800 there. Going back years. I did the math right there on the back of a receipt, and my hands started shaking. It was somewhere north of $200,000. I put the ledger back. I told myself I'd misread it. Then that night at dinner, my mother passed me the potatoes and asked about my truck's transmission, and I looked at her and thought, "You are robbing Dad blind and eating pot roast about it." I confronted her a week later, in the store after closing. "I found the other book," I said. She didn't deny it. She didn't cry. She just went very still, and she said one thing. "Paul, I need you to not know about this." "That's not an answer, Mom." "It's the only one I have." And then she said the sentence that bought her 19 years of my silence. "If you tell your father, I will lose everything, and so will you. Please, trust me one time without knowing why." And God help me, I did. I want to be honest about what those 19 years actually looked like, because I have heard myself describe them as loyalty, and that is a lie. The first time I nearly told him was that same autumn. My father and I were closing up, and he was counting the drawer, and he said, "Your mother's a saint, you know that? Nobody else could keep this place straight." I had the words in my mouth. I could taste them. And I looked at his face, proud, easy, completely certain, and I thought, it would kill him. So I said, "Yeah, she is, I told myself that was mercy. The second time was 4 years later at Kyle's wedding. Mom had gotten thin. She'd stopped going to church. She sat at the reception staring at nothing, and my brother asked me, "Is Mom okay?" I had a whole sentence ready, and then I realized that if I said it, the first question anybody would ask is how long I'd known. 4 years by then. So I said she was tired. That one wasn't mercy, and I knew it even then. That one was arithmetic. The third time, I didn't even get close. It was 2016. I was 38. I had a mortgage and a job at that store and a name in that town. And by then, the truth had grown a price tag with my name on it. 12 years of knowing. What was I going to say? I found it when I was 26, and I ate dinner with all of you every Sunday since? So I said nothing, and I stopped promising myself I ever would. That's the part nobody tells you about silence. It doesn't stay the same size. Every year you keep it, it gets more expensive to put down. I'd walk past that office and see her staring at a column of numbers, not moving, and I'd keep walking. 19 years. Every single day, I chose it again. It came apart in 2023, the way these things always do. A new accountant, a routine review, and a discrepancy that wouldn't reconcile. Within a month, there was a formal referral. My mother's name was on it. 68 years old, and there were investigators sitting at our kitchen table asking her about cash withdrawals from 1998. My brother Kyle stopped speaking to her entirely. My father did the thing that everyone in town found so noble. He stood in the driveway and told a reporter from the county paper that he had no idea, that he was devastated, that he had trusted his wife completely. He let her stand alone in it. I went to see her the night before she was supposed to meet with the prosecutor. She was sitting at that kitchen table with a cup of tea she hadn't touched. "Mom," I said, "it's over now. There's nothing left to protect. Tell me what the money was for." She was quiet for a long time. Then she got up, went to the hall closet, and came back with a shoebox. Inside were receipts, hundreds of them, money orders, cashier's checks, handwritten notes, every one of them made out to the same name, a woman named Denise Halverson, and underneath them, a stack of medical bills for a child, a boy named Adam, born in 1997. "Who is this?" I asked. "Your father's son," she said. I laughed, not because it was funny, because my brain simply refused to accept the sentence, and that was the only sound it could find. I remember staring at the wallpaper behind her head. I remember counting the little flowers on it. 12 across, then a border, then 12 more. Anything at all, so I wouldn't have to look at my mother's face while the last 30 years rearranged themselves. She kept talking, very calmly, like a person reading a report. Denise came to me in 1998, not to him. She was 23 years old and that baby was sick, really sick, in and out of the hospital his whole first year. Your father had already told her he wanted nothing to do with either of them. He said if she made trouble, he'd deny it and ruin her in this town. And Paul, he could have. He was Dale Rasmussen. She was nobody. "So I paid her," my mother said, "every month for 19 years, out of the store your father built, because he wouldn't." "Then why didn't you tell anyone?" I said, My voice didn't sound like mine. "Mom, you let them put your name on a fraud referral. Because that boy is 26 years old now," she said, "and he does not know who his father is. Because Denise built a life, and she's married, and she asked me one time in 1999, to please never let this touch her son. And because the day I told your father I knew, he looked me in the eye and said, 'Prove it.' So I stopped trying to prove anything. I just started paying. You could have divorced him. You could have taken half of everything." She looked at her hands for a long moment. "Because I still loved him," she said. "That's the part I can't make sound noble, so I'll just say it plain. I was 43 years old and I still loved my husband, and I thought if I handled it quietly enough, it would stay something that happened once, a long way away. It didn't. And by the time I understood that, I'd been paying for 6 years, and there was no version of stopping that didn't land on that child." "And done what with half of it?" she went on. "Explained in open court where the money was going? Paul, the only way to protect that boy was to make it look like theft. As long as everyone thought I was a thief, nobody went looking for a reason." I sat there in my parents' kitchen and I understood, finally, 19 years too late, what she had actually asked me for that night in the store. "I need you to not know about this." She hadn't been protecting herself from me. She'd been protecting me from having to choose between my father and the truth. She'd carried it alone so that nobody else would have to. And I had let her. 19 years, 3 times I nearly spoke, and every time I found a better word for the same decision. Mercy, timing, loyalty. It was cowardice, wearing whatever coat fit that year. "Mom," I said, "why are you telling me now?" She almost smiled. "Because tomorrow a lawyer is going to ask me the same question, and I'm too tired to lie anymore. And because you're the only one of us who ever looked in that drawer." I went to the prosecutor's office the next morning with my mother, and I did the thing I should have done at 26. I told them everything. The 2 ledgers, the exact date I found them, the fact that I had known for 19 years, my father's name, and the shoebox. I put my own silence on the record along with everything else. I'd spent 2 decades keeping it out of every story I told about myself, and I was done with that. The prosecutor was not particularly interested in my mother after that. What she'd done was still a crime. What my father had done was worse in every way that mattered to a jury, and the store's ownership records made it impossible for him to keep claiming he'd never noticed 19 years of missing money in a business he ran. The charges against her were reduced and eventually deferred. Hers is the name that stayed out of the paper the second time. My father's did not. The town that had called him a good man for 50 years read the details in the county paper over their breakfast. He kept the store for about 8 months. Then he sold it to a chain and moved 2 hours away, and as far as I know, not one of the people who used to know his kids' birthdays has called him since. Kyle apologized to our mother. It took him a year. She let him. I've never met Adam. My mother asked me not to look for him, and this time I listened for the right reason instead of the easy one. He's a grown man with a mother who fought for him and a life that has nothing to do with our last name. That was the whole point. My mother lives in a small apartment now with too many houseplants. She's 71. Last Sunday, she made pot roast and asked me about my truck's transmission. And for the first time in 19 years, there was nothing in the room between us. For most of my life, I thought the worst thing in my family was a woman quietly taking money out of a cash register. The worst thing in my family was a man everybody loved, standing in a driveway telling a reporter he had no idea. And the second worst thing was me, 26 years old, with the proof in my hands, deciding 3 separate times that it was kinder not to ask. So here's my question for you tonight. Has someone in your family ever asked you not to know something, and you agreed because it was easier? I'd like to hear about it. I read every comment.